So our next set of speakers come from the Northeast Seed Network, which is a new seed partnership that was launched at the National Native Seed Conference last year at Washington, D.C. And we have with us today talking about small-scale native seed production in the Northeast. We have Lindsey Feinberg from the Hilltop Hanover Farm, Emily Baisden and Andrea Berry from Wild Seed Project, and Lorimer from Native Plant Trust. And I see all of our speakers have joined us, and I think Uli, you are sharing your screen for slides, and go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yes. All right, here we go. It looks good. Andrea, Emily, Lindsey. Okay. Just give me the next when you'd like me to advance the slide, and I will mute myself.
Great. So Uli, if you want to go to the cover slide for us. So hi, I'm Andrea Berry. I'm the Executive Director of Wild Seed Project.
I'm Emily Baisden. I'm the Seed Center Director.
And we're going to be the first in this trio, and we will do our best to stick to the time because it will be pretty tight. But we're going to jump in talking about our new Native Seed Center in Cape Elizabeth, Maine.
So we are a nonprofit organization based in Maine, and our concept is really how to engage in conservation through community and giving individual people the tools needed to grow native plants from seed in all the places that they visit or live in. You could go to the next slide. Before we get started, we just want to acknowledge that we are here on ancestral Wabanaki territory, now called Maine. And we at Wild Seed Project recognize the inherent sovereignty of the tribes of the Wabanaki, the people of the Dawn, the Abenaki, the Houlton Band of Maliseet Indians, the Mi'kmaq Nation, the Penobscot Nation, and the Passamaquoddy tribe. We support their continued work for justice, self-determination, and decolonization. As we engage in this work, we want to be clear this knowledge and information did not start, nor will it end with us. The resources we share are gathered from many teachers, both human and non-human, often in extractive ways. And we encourage folks to learn more about their historical and present-day relationships of the Indigenous people and communities to the places that they live, and to join us in supporting Indigenous-led efforts to protect the land, water, plants, and creatures among us. Thank you. You can go to the next slide. So our organization is mostly member and donor based, but we have a small seed sale also where we sell packets of seed that have about 50 to 100 seeds in a packet. So enough for an individual to grow an awful lot of plants if they want to. But to help grow that, we're building this small scale seed nursery. We are not a land holding or owning organization, but we have an agreement with the Cape Elizabeth Land Trust to be able to grow plants on their property. And the whole property is about 25 acres, and it's fully public land. It's part of both a conservation and an agricultural easement. So we're building these seed increase plots that we've been calling living seed banks. And then also on the property, we're helping with habitat plantings and helping to make management plans for the whole property to help support the wildlife in the area. And then there's also an old farmhouse on the property that we are building kind of ornamental gardens. It was traditionally non-native gardens that have kind of been overgrown after the person who was living there passed away and left the rest of the property to the Cape Elizabeth Land Trust. The gardens kind of became in disarray. So we are building kind of a ornamental shift while using native plants and showcasing how people can have attractive gardens while using also habitat building plants. You can go to the next slide. So this is just a picture of the property. We are on like half an acre, where we're actually growing plants and building these spaces. like I said, there's this agricultural easement that requires some sort of agriculture to be done on this property. And we kind of come in with a unique ability to be being agriculture, but not in the historical sense that we think of as agriculture, where we're growing native plants and increasing seed plots. We also have a plant sale that these plants are used for, as well as various other projects happening throughout the state that we're going to talk about in a minute. You can get an idea of what the property looks like. It's got this kind of large wooded area, and then this area that has been historically farmed. It has not been farmed for years now, and we're helping with building kind of trails throughout a meadow and kind of restoring a meadow that's mostly agricultural weeds at this point, and a few really high quality native plants. So we're working on building that up. And you can see there's just like a little house there. You can go to the next slide. So this is kind of what we're building in that area, that yellow square. We've recently got our deer fencing up and our greenhouse in. And the greenhouse is funny because we're not actually growing plants within the greenhouse. We're mostly using it as a workspace where we're able to process seed and do our winter sowing. As many of you know, most of our plants have to be grown outside and get those winter conditions. So most of our greenhouse space is really a workspace. So we're not too frozen while we're doing all our seed sowing. And then we're growing lots of plants in frames and then also directly in the ground. And then also in pots. And it will be kind of a community open space where folks can come and learn and help work on things if they see fit, or just enjoy the space. So you can go to the next slide.
So our goal is really to take what is a very small scale amount of seed production, where we're essentially producing about 25,000 packets of individual home-focused seeds that's being distributed into communities. So it's about 2 million seeds a year from close to 100 different species total. The goal over the next 10 years with the Native Seed Center is to create enough living seed banks that we can grow 100 times that scale. We're still not talking anywhere near the scale that's happening in much of the rest of the country. You know, we will be sticking to the majority of that, just half acre by half acre fenced in area for that production. But for us, it's really giving us an opportunity to scale our seed production to supply the educational work that we're doing and the true conservation through community efforts that we're putting forward. Next slide.
Yeah, so these just kind of show a bit of the progression that we've gone through. It's been slow moving, which is sometimes good. We always try to remind ourselves that maybe we should move at plant space a little bit more, plant time. But we started with just some temporary fencing that we put in, and we're building up seed frames. And then we've got in some real fencing and some real high quality frames to grow in to protect from critters. And then we've been laying our landscape fabric and smothering all of the grass. There's an awful lot of grass there. And it's really starting to come together in a nice way. We planted our first beach plums last fall, and we'll be planting all throughout this coming spring. We've got a lot of plants ready to go in the ground. Things always take longer than you expect them to. So we've had plants ready and waiting, but the ground wasn't able to be prepped. So it's just always telling ourselves to work at the speed that we have available. Thanks. You could go to the next slide. But really what it takes is this huge community effort. We're a fairly small group. There's 8 of us. Mm-hmm. But it's very, very largely a team effort of the 8 employees and then our really large group of volunteers. And volunteers have been so necessary just to get us to the point of being able to have 8 employees. They're here for building. They help us with seed sowing. They help us with seed collection. They help us with every aspect of things, from filling mailers to actually getting their hands dirty. And you can see it everybody really loves what we do, but it really takes that community effort. And that's what we're trying to build upon, is making sure that everyone in our community is trained to be able to do these things in ethical ways, and to be able to continue the mission. Yeah, you can go to the next slide.
And really for us, it's a three-part model. So the seed stewardship being conservation in action, which is what's happening at the seed center. And then we're committed to building and installing with community these community seed gardens. We really believe that people can be planting native plants in their hometowns, in the places where they work. This is actually right next to the LL Bean flagship store, that planting that you're seeing in the center on property that's owned by the town of Freeport, Maine. And small scale gardens being installed is step one, but then we are really using our tools around education to teach people how to identify when seeds are ready to be collected, when they're ripe, how to collect them, to clean them, to prep and store them, and then to sow them and to tend those plants going forward. We see that very much full cycle being the critical part to how we expand, because again, we're never going to have 100 acres as access to us. So we need to take advantage of what we do have, which is community. Next slide.
Yeah, so just a little further on the community seed gardens, these are a really cool idea that we kind of came up with, where we knew that half acre was going to be used for a lot of growing plants for our annual plant sale and growing plants for all these different projects. But what we really wanted was to have satellite gardens all over the state. So the picture here is at the Viles Arboretum in Augusta, Maine. And I just want to note that, like, our seed center is in the ecoregion 59, but our office is in really the tri-corner of eco 59, 82, and 58. So we overlap in so many of these areas. And in order to actually service the state of Maine and most of the Northeast really is our membership base, is to have these community seed gardens in multiple places and in satellite areas. And that's where things like Viles Arboretum comes in. Freeport Wolf's Neck Center will be building one there, just on all sorts of different municipal, nonprofit, even corporate areas. And the concept is to have this kind of full circle educational opportunities where we teach people how to collect, how to sow, how to plant, and how to care for those plants and maintain the genetic diversity for the seeds and to be able to collect them. And that allows us to continue with our school and library programs where we do those educational outreach things. And then we're able to build the gardens at those sites. So they're able to learn how to read their site and understand what types of plants need to go in those areas. And then we do all these sorts of workshops, really full year round things to make it a really concise collective. Cool. You can go to the next slide.
And we'll just close out by really emphasizing that we believe in public seed access. We recognize that we are an organization that is striving for towards decolonization, which also includes kind of moving out of the capitalist model that we're using to sell seeds and plants and to get that into community. And so part of that strategy of making that transition away from that for sale model is creating these public seed access places and points throughout. So this is actually plantings that we've done at the Maine Beer Company in Freeport, Maine. And we're really working with anyone who will work with us all throughout the state. We know that restoration projects are critical to the conservation movement, but we also know that that's not enough. Maine has fully jumped into the 30 by 30 model, but we're asking the questions, what about the other 70%? And we're focusing our efforts. We know there are so many people and so many of our partner organizations across the state are focused on restoration projects. So we are trying to fill the other side of that gap, replacing lawns with natives, focusing on community gardens, and really looking at the smallest of places all the way down to planters outside of office buildings and outside outside of homes in some of our more urban parts, little is it known that there are urban parts of Maine. So we're really trying to democratize seed access as much as we possibly can, and modeling that with our small scale growing and the satellite gardens. So just in conclusion, Uli, if you can go to the next slide, we know that there is so much lawn all across our state and all across this country, and those are prime spaces, we believe, for a changing of what's growing there, and a shift to bring all of our green spaces into more balance. So if you can go to the next slide. This really incorporates our vision of where we want to go. We want to see native plants and seed being collected from native plants all throughout our community. So we'll go to the last slide, and Emily and I will just say thank you so much. We're really pleased to be part of the Northeast Seed Network, and are happy to answer any questions at the end after our partners present. So thanks so much, everyone.
Okay, next up we have Lindsey from Hilltop Hanover Farm.
Hi, my name is Lindsey, and just really, I really liked Wild Seed Project's presentation. I think we are located in New York State, in Southern New York, in Westchester County. Sorry, Uli, next slide. And we are a 60-acre farm with 6 acres under active cultivation. We also grow organic vegetables, and we're I think we sort of straddle the model between like small and large, or like mid-sized farms. So next slide. Oh, okay. So we donate about 10% of all the produce. And we have 150 CSA members. We also have a really big volunteer program with 260 volunteers.
All right. Hi, everybody. Hopefully we can welcome Lindsey back here after I give my brief update. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the Northeast Seed Network. As Alexis mentioned, we sort of formally launched this last year at the meeting in Virginia, and we've had quite a bit of activity since then. Sort of some of the highlights here. In other words, we've been meeting on a quarterly basis with the entire network, which continues to grow. I think one of our bigger achievements is the creation and publication of a target taxa list, and I'll get a little bit of that, along with seed collection guidelines. We've also made some good progress at Nasami Farm in Massachusetts in building out some seed cleaning and storage facilities, which are things that are the kinds of infrastructure that are largely missing in the Northeast. We've also done quite a bit of work at the steering committee level in terms of some of the governance and structures and agreements. We've initiated a seed and plant materials market research group. So this is led by Eve Allen from Ecological Health Network, who is really trying to take a hard look at what the end user market looks like and how that information can help us forecast which species might be needed or in demand, and can kind of inform the earlier steps in the supply chain. We've also had some really promising trials with a data management system, because I think as many people know, the importance of documentation and really being able to produce source identified seed also means that we have to be able to, across a lot of different users, be able to share information and documentation. And so I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute as well. So our steering committee, just to give you some faces to who's behind this effort here. That I'm really proud of the group as it exists now, because we represent expertise in really all the different steps in the native plant material supply chain and network building. We have folks here from the organic farming community. We have people who have extensive backgrounds in network building and regional conservation partnerships, restoration practitioners. John here, who's a PhD student at UConn, and who'll be presenting tomorrow, I believe, about how the seed market is influenced by the demand of municipal and DOT scale projects. Beth Falk representing the commercial nursery industry, and myself. Here's our burgeoning label soup slide, just to show you that this effort continues to grow with a lot of different partners here. Again, we're really, really excited, just to echo what Lisa said before, that as a new and sort of growing network, the level of enthusiasm that we're seeing, the level of interest is really, really heartening and encouraging. And we hope to expand that group of collaborators and partners well into the future. I think it is worth saying that our vision is to cover a fairly large geographic area, which we have roughly defined as the Northeast, and that can span anything from maybe Northern Virginia all the way up through to Maine, and including New York State. And so it presents a lot of logistical challenges, and as we like to say, we're starting now with sort of more regional, localized hubs of activity with the intention of growing those out. And so one of the first pieces, besides the internal steering committee and other sorts of work, was to get a list of what seeds do we want, and to get people out there actually making those wild collections, which will form the basis of our seed increase programs. And so after many, many meetings, something like 13 or 15 meetings last year, a fairly large committee, and if anybody's been on large committees, you know how hard it is to line up schedules and get consensus and so forth. So this is really quite a laudable achievement. And so we've produced a sort of first draft, or first target taxa list that represents 66 taxa. We recognize that this is not a one-size-fits-all for all of the needs, particularly in the context of a large geographic area, but it's a place to start. And the taxa list was filtered by first of all, taking out any state listed or globally listed and federally listed rare plants. So we're not interested in dealing with rare plants. The list was filtered for things that were relatively easy to grow, things that were not recalcitrant in terms of storage needs, and then based on input from our commercial nursery and restoration partners, what the sorts of things that people are looking for now. And so we've ended up with this list of 66 taxa. It includes herbaceous material as well as woodies and trees and shrubs. And we really see this as an important starting point, that as regional activity begins to ramp up, that this list can be modified and specialized. So, for example, maybe a list that is more suited for our northern partners in Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire, and again, modifying it again so that it will really reflect what those regional markets are, and that we see our role as the seed network to be able to coordinate the efforts amongst these regional hubs to really lift up and make sure that we're working towards our goal of greater accessibility for these seeds and a sustainable supply. So the Seed and Plant Market Research Committee, as I said, is being headed up by Ecological Health Network, along with these other partners here. We've started with a survey of end users, and we've reached out to over 700 potential end users, and have received responses from about half of those. And so that's been really important for us. And we're sort of beginning to analyze some of that data now, and hopefully we'll have some more to present next year about what those trends might indicate. Similarly, our data management committee right now is trialing a system of seed collection, or a management system that allows folks to track seed collections through nursery production. So in other words, from the entire cycle. And we're hoping that this will not only allow us to make sure that the provenance information that is really important stays with the seed as it goes through the whole process, and either ends up as seed packets, bulk seed, as seed that goes into an increase plot, or as actual physical plants. But part of that that collection tracking also allows us to see who is collecting from which wild populations. And I think this is another important aspect for us, as we have a lot of stakeholders in the Northeast, and we want to make sure that we're not over collecting from one particular site if it's popular or known by a lot of folks, and that we're really doing a good job sampling as much genetic diversity as possible. We still have a lot of work to do in terms to grow the network. We are about to launch a scientific research committee that is headed by my colleague Michael Piantadosi here at Native Plant Trust, and to try to fold into and answer some really important research questions into this entire process, particularly in seed increase, some of the genetic issues. I think a lot of that has the great potential to inform our decisions down the line. We're in the process of creating a network charter and a strategic plan, drafting member agreements, data sharing agreements that are really important, so that that we have some consistency in the types of data and how they are shared, and who is comfortable with sharing that information. Some of Eve's end user research will be used to produce an online marketplace down the line, and a digital community platform, so that people that are interested in accessing seed will have a sense of which of our network partners has holdings, what species are available in quantities, and so forth. We continue to be working on the educational trainings and resources, and perhaps most importantly, continue to work on our outreach to the tribal nations here, so that we can learn from their practices as well. We have an exciting workshop that is planned to convene regional botanic gardens and seed banks in Arboreta. We have a meeting coming up at the end of this month down in Virginia as a sort of kickoff meeting to see how regional seed banks and botanic gardens can leverage their resources and expertise in service of this larger effort. And there'll be a follow-up meeting this year in Boston. The National American Public Gardens Association will be holding their annual meeting in the Northeast this year, so we'll have a follow-up meeting for that. Lastly, wanted to say that if anybody's interested here of the audience in learning more and staying in touch and getting involved with us, we've got this nifty little QR code here that you're welcome to capture on your phone. Alternately, we've got a couple of different contact emails right now. And I also just wanted to urge everybody to tune in tomorrow afternoon at this time for our steering committee member, John Campanelli's presentation on climate change as a catalyst for New England's DOTs and their use of native plants. So to make sure that we have some room for Lindsey, if you're ready, we can go back to your slides.
Okay, so just want to back up. I joined Hilltop about 2 years ago. My background is in wild seed collection. I was part of the first partnership between the Wildflower / Native Plant Trust, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Seed Bank, and the Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and we did coastal seed collection. So that is where I came in. But anyway, so Like I said before, we are still very, very community focused. We go to seed swaps events. We teach a bunch of classes throughout the region. We partnered with another farm in the Hudson Valley earlier this year, and did a whole start to finish workshop from seed collection to seed sowing, and they're going to use those seeds from their farm that they collected to do a restoration on their site. So this is Emily. She's the native plant program manager, and this is one of our seed plots at the farm. So you can go to the next slide. These are a couple of our little small projects we did earlier this year. On the left, this is the compost facility at Westchester, and we planted this little hell strip, and it's kind of like a little swale here. This one on the right is through BOCES, which is I think like Board of Educational Services, and they have a couple throughout the state. This is a little turtle pond that I thought was really cute. And then up above, you'll see we propagate a lot of seeds, obviously. And sometimes there's just like so much left over. So through kind of our little mini network, we managed to donate a bunch of these little like loaf pans. That's what people have called them, of just like little seedlings. And it turns into like thousands and thousands of plants. So this is something I think we're going to probably keep doing. Okay, next slide. So this is the farm. It is called Hilltop, and it is on a hill, literally an exposed hill. And where you see the little like bright maroon boxes and stuff, this is where, yep, this is where our seed plots are. So we have like a little row of we have 2 species right on the vegetables at the top on that one side. And then on the right, yep, we have one row of New England aster. And then so down below on the bottom left, this was just taken out of cultivation and over the course of last year. So we have now planted about those 2, like the little side squares on the right and the left. And then this year they're extending the fence about, I think the thing got messed up, but if you see this orange, it says wet. And this we're extending in so we can grow a bunch of more wetland species. And that's a lot of the water drains there. You can't really grow anything there. I think once it was labeled as pasture, it's just, I think it's going to be a really great opportunity to keep growing wet species. Okay, next slide. So this is our expansion into that lower field. You can see we don't really have like a unified way that we plant things. Sometimes we plant with volunteers and we still plant with them, and sometimes we hand plant them ourselves. This year was our first year using this water wheel, which was really, really exciting to use. We got a ton of plants planted, but again, we are a vegetable and a native seed farm, so we try to work together as much as we can. And one of our team members, she's in the blue shirt in that picture, is going to be trained, I think, on the tractor this year. So that's really exciting for us. Okay, next slide. Okay, another thing, this is our first year that we're officially under the County Parks Department, which I think is one of the best things about it is that we have access to 18,000 acres of land that we can collect seed from, but also every single park, not all the parks, but a lot of the parks have nature centers, and they have their own little they have their own education and curators. That my title is a curator, and they are like my little kind of like my reconnaissance to find species to collect seed from, and they're like just an amazing resource. And this is one of our largest parks. It's really diverse. It's kind of sometimes like I get surprised that we have such a great, thank you. We have such a great park there. It's really diverse. But yeah, there's like, this is a species, little blue stem. Like, I don't think we would ever grow this because this grows wild, like amazingly in this one park. And yeah, next slide. So again, with having the having access to the Parks Department, you can see this is a seed plot we're growing for woodland species. We don't have any shade at all on Hilltop. So this is an old native wildflower garden at the same park you just saw from before, and they helped clear out some space for us, and we added it to the sides of this little pathway, so it's kind of like a nice little ground cover garden thing. And we did grow a lot more woodland species this year, so I'm hoping that we can keep doing that. So I do have a lot left. So this, you can see we're experimenting with plastic alternatives. This is paper mulch. If you go to the next slide, you will see the paper mulch was a failure. So we're trying to come up with new ways here. This had already been planted, so we had this school group come. They helped us mulch it. The rest of the paper blew away. These are our volunteers, and then the mulch kind of washed out at the end. So we're still trying to figure that out, but I think it's important just to highlight kind of the mistakes and how you can learn from them. Next slide. So this is kind of why I wanted to go back into how I started. But this is all in the Hudson Valley. This is like our region. The top middle slide is that's Yorktown Heights. That's where our farm is. Next slide. This is one of our parks that regularly floods when there is no rain. I mean, when there's rain, but so this is right along the Long Island Sound. Would love to do some more coastal restoration. Next slide. We're almost done. So one of the major, this is the first like large project we're working towards. We're removing a couple of dams. The pink one in the Star, that's Upper Minkle Dam. It drains into the Hudson River. That's going to be our first big project. And the landscape architect we're working with she's really amazing. So we've been going over the species list, and I managed to catch a couple of bad shrubs we shouldn't plant. So this I'm really excited for. We have 2 years. So we'll see how it goes. Next slide. Lastly, I don't know, we started a local 59, so 59 is our eco region. This started last year. And we're kind of like a hyper local, like sort of I like to say we're like the mini hub of the Northeast Seed Network. So we, like Uli was saying, like it's hard to, things can progress slowly. You have, but we have a really great steering committee with representation from the New York Botanic Garden. Linda, someone saying Linda Rolleder. Yeah, she's, sorry. She did not want to be on our steering committee because she's very busy, but we love her. And actually on the right-hand corner, you'll see that's Rich, Linda's husband. This is a fern class that we just taught last weekend, that they taught. This was really fun. Like, we don't know how to grow ferns yet, so it was a spore propagation class. The open house, we did focused a lot on like seed cleaning. This is our chicken, it's not a chicken coop now, we call it a seed coop, but it was, we like sort of refurbished this chicken coop, and now it's our like seed cleaning site, and it's our little high tunnel. Okay, that is the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our speakers for sharing about your work in the Northeast. I think we have time for one quick question. And so the question is, this is an exciting model and posed by this person as a fellow Northeasterner. They know that there's a great need to increase native availability in that area. So do any of you have any thoughts about replicating this model around the region?
Yeah, go ahead,
Go
Andrea.
ahead. Well, so one of the things that we feel we're very excited about is bringing people to our small seed center and walking them around. We've got kind of draft models for the seed beds that we use. We've been chronicling our whole process of how we grow, and we're constantly bringing other folks down to kind of walk it through and to be available for answering questions. And so I think as we start to expand as a network, the more that we can be in connection and visiting spaces, the better. We're, talks like this is one of the key ways to make that. Emily and I in Wild Seed Project just hosted folks from one of the Wabanaki tribes down at our Native Seed Center and talked about how to kind of build and start up these small centers. And really, it just keeps coming down to conversations, and modeling is the best way to go. We're all growing native plants. And so it's just the question of like, what are all the different moving pieces to starting a nursery, and how do we like put them all together into a picture, and we're all happy to share.
That's great. Thank you, Andrea.